Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Marie in Motion. Today I'm honored to have Mr. Fergus Auld, who has been appointed by His Majesty as Ambassador of United Kingdom to Azerbaijan. Mr. Fergus Auld has had a very long and successful career in diplomacy, representing United Kingdom in many countries and different cultures. Thank you so much for being today here with us, and I hope you will enjoy the interview and the podcast.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Mariam.
It's
a pleasure to be here just in front of Buckingham Palace.
Yes. So we would love to start from your personal journey, Mr. Auld. So how did you decide to start a diplomatic career, and what made you pursue this career?
Well, I guess from a young age, I was really interested by travel overseas. I was always curious about different people and different cultures. And so when I finished school, I spent some time backpacking, especially in Asia. I spent some time teaching English as a foreign language in different places. And it was actually when I turned 26 that I became a diplomat for the first time. So I would say to people, there are many different roads that can bring you into diplomacy. But if you are curious and interested in other people and other cultures, that's the most important thing. I've been very lucky that I've had a diplomatic career that has taken me to Thailand and to India and to Russia. And now, of course, it is wonderful to be in Azerbaijan and to be an ambassador for the first time.
That's awesome. Did you ever expect to be ambassador of United Kingdom in Azerbaijan?
So the thing in the Foreign Office is you can never be quite sure what your next job is going to be. Some of the things that helped me to compete successfully to be ambassador in Azerbaijan were having worked previously in Russia, knowing something about energy and climate change issues, having worked on some regional security issues. So in order to be an ambassador somewhere, you usually have to be able to tell a good story about what you're able to bring to the role rather than just being a diplomat. And I was very lucky that the role of being ambassador in Azerbaijan came open at the right time in my career. So very lucky.
That's amazing. And I'd love to ask some questions about Azerbaijan. So as we know, you've had a language training in 2021 to 2022.
Yeah.
And then you've been appointed as ambassador in 2022.
Yes.
So would you mind to share with us your journey starting from the language training?
Sure.
Because I think Azerbaijani citizens and also British citizens are really curious about hear more how it was in the back stage of the training and the moving to Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
So if you could share with us.
Sure. So I mean, we take languages very seriously in the Foreign Office. We know that when diplomats speak the language of the country that they are posted to, it makes a stronger connection with the people of that country. So I studied Azerbaijani for over a year before becoming ambassador in Baku. When I started, it was COVID time, so I spent 10 months learning Azerbaijani with 2 teachers based in Baku. I was working from home on my laptop and having a few hours of lessons each day and doing homework on top of that. And then after 10 months, I had a chance to move to Ganja, as you know, the second biggest city in Azerbaijan. And there I lived with a local family for 6 weeks and had a couple of different teachers who I was able to have classes with face to face. And you know, that's a really fantastic opportunity because when you are living outside of the capital city, you're outside of the Baku bubble, as I think of it. You're living with local people. You're able to ask questions about anything that you want without the pressure of actually already being ambassador. So I learned a huge amount about Azerbaijan through learning the language and through that experience before I then became ambassador later that summer.
Oh, wow. So you spent a few months with a local family.
Yes.
And How was the reaction of the local family to a British person living with them? Because I guess were they fluent in English or not?
Well, the purpose of living with a local family is to be entirely immersed in the language. So
completely.
they did know some English, especially the son of the family has excellent English. But I only used English when I was really, if I was really tired at the end of the day, then perhaps I would speak English a bit. But it's so much more useful just to be forced to speak Azerbaijani all the time. It's the way that your learning can really accelerate. Now, I was actually the third ambassador to stay in Genge and learn. So they already had some experience of working with of hosting British ambassadors before.
That's awesome, and I think it's a very interesting fact that many people don't know. Because personally, I myself, I had no idea that that's the journey as a British ambassador you've gone through, and that's really interesting. And I think when most students they move to UK, they stay in British families to learn English.
Yes.
So, and it's not really popular concept in Azerbaijan to do, because mostly people, when they're moving to Azerbaijan, they're not really pursuing the language.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've gone through that, it makes me feel proud as an Azerbaijani, and I think everyone in Azerbaijan heard the way you speak.
Yeah.
And we are all proud to hear that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, the Azerbaijanis are the most wonderfully warm and hospitable people, but I certainly find that when I'm speaking, when I'm giving a speech, or when I'm just talking to people in Azerbaijani, the reaction is always so positive. It's very motivating for me to carry on using the language.
Wow, that's great. And so you moved to Baku afterwards from Genge, and you've lived first in the second capital and second biggest city, and then you moved to the capital Baku. How was the first impression?
So, I mean, I think one of the things about Baku and about Azerbaijan more broadly is that people don't have a very clear sense of what the city or what the country is going to be like when they arrive. And even though I had studied Azerbaijani for that year, and I'd watched Azerbaijani old films, and I'd watched what I could in terms of TV programs. There are a few now, but still you don't really know what a city's like until you move there. And you know, I love being in Genge, and I'm a very happy resident of Baku as well. I have to say that the longer that I live in Azerbaijan, the more I enjoy getting outside of Baku too and traveling all around the country. I'm from Scotland, and my heart is always in the mountains. And Azerbaijan has so many wonderful mountains all around different parts of the country. So I'm still very much enjoying traveling around and experiencing new bits of the country that I haven't traveled to before.
I would love to ask, so you don't stay in Baku all the time. You travel to the countryside and to other regions. What are your favorite regions to travel to in Azerbaijan?
So yeah, I mean, Baku is a wonderful city, and that's where I have to do most of my work. But sometimes I'm able to get around the country to visit projects we're doing, but also just as a tourist to get to know the country more. So this year I went to, I think the best trip I've done, I went to Nakhchivan for the first time. And Nakhchivan is just stunning. There are great stories, there's interesting archaeology. As ever, there are beautiful places to visit. Going down to Ordubad really gave me a bit more cultural insight. So that was a great trip. I love going back to Guba and Gusar and properly into the mountains there. I had a wonderful trip to Khenalig for the first time in March, and walking around there is great. I love the south. Lankaran is a personal favorite. I think the food there is particularly good. So
it's great.
And then, you know, I've been very lucky as an ambassador to travel to some of the parts of the country that not all Azerbaijanis themselves have been able to visit because of landmines or because of, you know, occupation. So bits of Karabakh are also beautiful and developing very fast. So there are so many places that I'm happy to recommend to people to go back to.
And what are in your list for future? Are you planning to travel? What the places that you'd like to explore in Azerbaijan?
So I have in my office in Baku a jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, wow.
And every region of the country has its own piece. So I said when I arrived in Azerbaijan in August 2022 that I was going to travel to every region of the country by the end of 2023. Unfortunately, I failed to travel to every region, but that's still my aspiration to, before I leave as ambassador, I want to have visited every region. So there are still some corners that I need to get to. I need to get up to Beylagan beyond Zakatala and Gach, which is another wonderful part of the country. And I need to do some bits in the middle. I've done quite a lot round the edge, but need to do some bits in the middle as well.
Hopefully, we will read about your travel stories on your Twitter account.
I hope
X
so.
Account, because I think you have really interesting postings over there, and I highly recommend to everyone to follow you in there, because it's, as an Azerbaijani, I'm learning things that I don't even know about Azerbaijan. So
that's nice to hear.
That it's nice to follow you and read all of your posts. So my next question is going to be that as an ambassador, you've been on your role for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
What was the most meaningful cultural exchange initiatives that you've done between UK and Azerbaijan?
So cultural exchange is an interesting one. I think, as an ambassador, I'm able to do a certain number of things. And of course, part of my role is about the relationship between the British government and the Azerbaijani government and bringing people together that way. But I'm slightly humble as an ambassador in talking about cultural exchange, because cultural exchange isn't something that actually is about what governments are doing. It's what happens between people at all sorts of different levels. When I arrived in London Heathrow on Saturday evening and got a taxi back to my home here, my taxi driver was saying, "So you've just come from Baku? Where's Baku? Tell me about it." And the thing that he knew about Baku, firstly, was Formula One.
Yeah.
And secondly, was that Arsenal football team played there once.
Oh, wow.
And it's some of those connections are what actually bring people together. Yeah. I love that when I'm walking around the streets of central Baku, I see pictures of Tommy Shelby from Peaky Blinders. I don't know if you've ever seen Peaky Blinders,
I did.
But barber shops with Cillian Murphy's face on as Tommy Shelby. As British ambassador, I have nothing to do with that. That's about people who are interested in each other's cultures, are interested in each other's, film or art. So we do some things, especially through the British Council. But the real cultural exchange happens between people rather than between embassies.
Yes, I completely agree with you, because that's what personally I face in London, and it's not about the whole platforms as like certain browsers.
Yeah.
Like everyone can search and ask questions about the Azerbaijan in there, but it's all about meeting the person and feeling the culture from the person.
Yes.
Because as an Azerbaijani, I've been inherited all Azerbaijani qualities, and whoever meets me, I think they can feel that. And for many people who meet me, I'm always the first Azerbaijani they met.
Yeah, which is really exciting. You're an ambassador too, Mariam.
I'm trying to represent, but I have a long journey to go to probably call myself as that. But I'm trying to represent Azerbaijan in cultural exchange for people in day-to-day life. Yeah. And I hope I'm trying to do a good job. So I've seen recently on one of your posts about the scholarships that been placed for Azerbaijani citizens who are moving to Azerbaijan, and I think you hosted them in the embassy. So is there any other new programs that you are working on to bring to Azerbaijan? Because many people are interested in studying in UK, and many people asking me about it.
So the scheme where which has just started with the new academic term is the Chevening Scholarship, where we from the Foreign Office we sponsor scholars coming from all over the world to the UK, usually to do master's degrees.
Okay.
But actually, and that will continue, and we also have another fellowship that we support, the John Smith's Trust Fellowship, where we have usually mid-career professionals in particular areas coming to do a shorter course around leadership and some other things in the UK. But actually, the biggest number of scholars coming to the UK at the moment are sponsored through the Azerbaijani government's scholarship. So in the last, this is the third year of that renewed program with 400 students traveling overseas. And each of those years, 50 to 60% of the people studying overseas have chosen to come and study in the UK. And I think that's amazing. I mean, I think that all of these bright, talented young Azerbaijanis who could go anywhere in the world, the fact that over half of them want to come and study in the UK is wonderful.
I think it is, and to be honest, I think that's the best decision they're taking.
Very sensible of them.
So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I know many people personally who moved to UK through Azerbaijan scholarship program, and many people in Azerbaijan, they sending me messages about it, and I always put in touch with them. I send them the links for the programs because I think that's the best way to do. So my next question is going to be, obviously, it's more traditional question about the Azerbaijani traditions and cuisine.
Yeah.
So I think probably after living 2 years in Azerbaijan, you've got to know Azerbaijani cuisine.
I have.
What do you think about it, and what are your favorites?
Well, I certainly have a few more kilograms on my tummy than when I arrived 2 years ago, Mariam, because there is so much wonderful food, and everywhere when I travel to those different parts of the country, I love all of the different regional varieties as well. I was talking about being up in Khenalig in March. I remember walking to Greece, another beautiful mountain village, and again being in a local homestay with a local family. The best dolma I've ever tasted were in that village in Greece, just in a kind of simple house. Down in Lankaran, of course, I love eating the lavangi. You know, that's really special. When I lived in Ganja with the family, you know, sometimes it's the really simple things. It was just fresh chirek, gaimak, bal, you know, just a really simple breakfast with really amazing ingredients can be very special. So yeah, no, I'm still learning new parts of Azerbaijani cuisine, but love it.
It's adorable that you mentioned lavangi, because we've spoken about earlier that I represent Azerbaijan. I represent lavangi as well.
Oh, do you?
My lavangi is very famous in London.
Is it?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
And all the ingredients are very easy to find in local English supermarkets. So I have few British friends that started to make lavangi at home.
Great.
And it's hard to explain the dish itself because it can be made with fish, with chicken.
Yes.
But it's a great dish for me.
It's
my favorite.
And of course, you know, in terms of bringing people together, there's nothing that brings people together better than good food.
Exactly. And tea.
And tea.
So would you like to, if we have a sit maybe over there?
For sure.
Yeah. So, Mr. Auld, you mentioned earlier about TV shows and films that you've been watching while you were learning about Azerbaijani.
Yeah.
And actually, that was one of our questions that we were planning to ask to you. So, what are your favorite films that you've watched? And obviously, afterwards, I'm curious to know about literature as well.
Yes. So I really enjoyed discovering Azerbaijani cinema for the first time when I was on language training. There's so many films that you're able to get just by looking on YouTube. My absolute favorite is Gun Keçdi. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Oh, so I recommend as your homework, Gun Keçdi, set in the 1960s, set in Baku, with a couple that were in love when they were students and then got separated, spending a day back together. It's about memory, it's about the old and the new, it's about lots of things, and it's a beautiful love story as well. So that's great. I like Delhi Kur. Have you ever seen that one? Another old one, I think also from the 60s or 70s. I was in Gazakh a few months ago and had the opportunity to ring a bell at the seminary there that appears in the film Delhi Kur. So that was a fun moment too. And I think film is such a great way to understand where a country has come from, and its artistic tradition as well.
Yes, it is, and that's how I've been learning English, and that's what I think I recommend to many people, because British English, the accent and British dialect is much different than American.
Yes.
So for people who are moving to United Kingdom, would you recommend to watch British TV and British cinema?
I certainly would, and of course, I mean, there are so many different dialects. There are so many different traditions within Britain itself. It's not a large country, but it's very dense. And I mean, I don't know how much you've had a chance to travel around the UK, Marianne, but even in Scotland, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, the outer islands, these are all quite different. If you're in Yorkshire, it feels different to being in Lancashire. There are so many parts of the UK, and I know that one of the things that sometimes takes a little bit of getting used to for Azerbaijani students here is the cities or parts of the country that have very strong different accents. So definitely British TV, British film. We're proud that it's some of the greatest TV and film in the world. It's a great thing to build your understanding before you come here.
Yes, I completely agree. And even National Theatre is a great place as well. And also, as you mentioned, the Scottish accent, Irish accent, English accent is very different. And I received this question. I was a big supporter of England in the finals this year.
Yeah.
I was completely in the flags, on my face, in the uniform, in the form.
Yeah.
And my followers asked me, why there's Scotland and England playing from UK? And it was for me, maybe it's not my place to explain that, but it's not just the accent, it's inside of UK.
Yes.
We have Ireland, Scotland, and England.
And Wales.
And Wales.
Yes.
And so you are from Scotland.
Yes.
And do you feel yourself, so how would you differentiate a Scottish person from English person?
Well, I mean, that's a big question. And of course, for all of us, we are lots of different identities at the same time. So I am both a very proud Scot and I'm a very proud Brit. When I'm watching football, it is Scotland or when I'm watching rugby, it's particularly Scotland that get me excited. When I was watching the Olympics this summer, it's Team GB that I'm cheering on. So, and for different people, how they express their own identity, their own culture can be different. And as I say, we can be many different things at once.
Of course. So, and Mr. Auld, that's the thing I wanted to explain to my audience, because obviously people have idea about Auld, but they don't realize how different they are.
Yes.
If they haven't lived here.
Yes.
If they haven't really met the person from, as you mentioned, from Scotland, from England, from Wales, and from Ireland.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, I think, Great Britain really unique.
Yes.
That it's a home for so many, not just for this four, but for all the cultures and for all the international people. Like, even while we were shooting, we probably passed through more than 10 nationalities.
For sure. I mean, we're right in the middle of London. I mean, I remember coming and meeting some of our Chevening scholars quite soon after they'd arrived in the UK 2 years ago. And they said, we didn't know what to expect in London, but it's wonderful because we feel that we see people like us here.
Yeah.
And one of the best things about being a British ambassador is to know that the country that I'm representing is one that really values diversity, that is inclusive to people coming from Azerbaijan or all sorts of different countries. And of course, I don't want to try and pretend that the UK is perfect, it is some utopia, but I've never been to another country where I feel that there is that same, that people have come and they have stayed and they have felt that they have been welcomed and that there was something that they wanted to stay for here. I think that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So yeah, it's one of the things that makes me proudest about being a British ambassador, I think.
I had another question back to Azerbaijani culture and traditions. So many people tell me that there's so many similarities between Azerbaijani person about the values and the family traditions, I would say, as very similarities to British person. Like, would you say that traditions of Azerbaijan are similar to British and Scottish traditions?
So, wherever you are in the world, people are people. Okay. And I think it's very natural to, when you're curious and when you're open to seeing and meeting different people, you will very quickly find the similarities that exist between people. I think in Azerbaijan, that value that you place on families and connections between different generations is really strong, is really positive. I think your tradition of hospitality and welcoming guests is something that, for sure, the British people can be welcoming and hospitable. I think we would have some way to go to be as welcoming and as hospitable as Azerbaijanis. So yes, there are lots of things that connect us, but some of the differences are interesting too.
Mr. Auld, I would love to ask about the music, Azerbaijani music, because I'm sharing so many information about our mugham,
yes,
about the Azerbaijani jazz, about our national instruments, saz, tar, kamancha, with my British friends.
Yeah.
What do you think about the music culture, and what are your favorites in Azerbaijan?
So before I came to Azerbaijan, one of my friends in the UK, who is a musician, said how interesting it was to have had an Azerbaijani student who had introduced him to some Azerbaijani music that he hadn't been aware of. Of course, you've got that wonderful tradition back to the beginning of the 20th century with opera and with musicals that were really fusing different cultures, and I think and different musical traditions. And I think one of the wonderful things about being in Azerbaijan, and something that people, when they come to Baku for the first time, they see, is that fusion of, traditions that may have come from the south or the north or the east or the west that have been brought together and fused there. I do like going and listening to mugham. I think that's a really distinctive musical taste. I know that there are some great jazz stars from the 60s and 70s, and that tradition has carried on till today as well. So it's another element of what makes Azerbaijan a really unique and vibrant country.
Well, thank you so much. And as you mentioned, Azerbaijani composer Zey Hajibali was the first composer who composed an opera in Muslim world, in the Eastern world, and Shafiq Akhundov was the first female composer who composed the opera in Eastern and Muslim world. So I feel always so proud when I share this with people, and not many people know that. One of my last questions is, what should be next steps to promote Azerbaijan more in the Western world? Because I feel like we have a great promotion at the moment going. We have lovely events as Grand Prix, which is just next week, and many other. The COP29 is taking place in Azerbaijan, and what else should be done, do you think, as individuals, because right now my audience is watching us all over the world.
Yeah.
What they can do as individuals to bring up their country
Yeah.
more onto the table?
Well, I mean, so much is made by personal connections between people, and of course nowadays social media really accelerates and facilitates the connections that exist between people. So each of us has the opportunity to engage in new different ways. I would say with COP29, it is an extraordinary moment. It is going to be the biggest event that Azerbaijan has ever hosted. As someone who cares about climate change, working for a government that cares about climate change, it's also such an important event to be held on such a critical issue. But there's never going to be a better moment for Azerbaijan to be, showing itself to the world, to introduce itself to people who previously didn't know so much about it.
I completely agree with you, and I think as you mentioned, COP29 is going to change a lot as well in future, and I'm looking forward to see it and maybe be part in future. My final question is going to be, what's your most remarkable memory in Azerbaijan that you've had in the last 3 years?
Goodness. I'm not sure that I can boil it down to a single one. There are so many wonderful things. It's been wonderful to visit some of my friends and colleagues' weddings. It was very memorable to spend that time in Genja. But all of the time, I'm finding I meet new people. I travel to different parts of the country. I feel I'm still learning and absorbing, and I don't think I can boil it down to one single experience.
And how was your first Azerbaijani wedding experience? Because I think it's not just a wedding, it's an entire representative of a culture.
Yeah, no, really. So lovely. I mean, as a bit of a romantic, a wedding is always a lovely occasion. But as you say, it's also that opportunity to see a different side of the culture and see people expressing themselves in a slightly different way. So love the food, love the dancing, it was great.
That's amazing. And so you've mentioned that you like to ask me some questions.
I would, if I'm allowed, Mariam.
It's a pleasure. And I was just thinking as an idea, what do you think about having questions to me in Azerbaijani?
I think my head is in the UK and in English at the moment. So I will probably do them in English. Yeah. Let me see if any come to me, then I will ask. So I mean, I guess, Mariam, I'm curious about your experience of coming to the UK. I think you may have been a student here. So tell me about how you chose to come to the UK to study and what your experience was as a student here.
So my journey with UK started when even before I was born. In my mother's belly, when she was pregnant, she used to work in BA, British Airways, in a sales team. So she used to travel to London quite often.
Yeah.
And I think even before I was born, I got the love to UK. And for me, London is not just UK, because London is really multicultural.
Yes.
And UK is like each region and each country, like village, country it has its own authenticity.
Yes.
Because London is a capital.
Yes.
It's a cosmopolitan city.
Yes.
And when I moved to UK, I moved to a smaller city in West Midlands. So for me, my expectations about West Midlands were as same as London.
Yeah.
And when I moved there, I've actually got into a really British community.
Yeah.
Which was a great start point and a great foundation to learn. And one of the funniest things that I would say, the most surprising thing for me, it was the structure of conversation, the way people communicate there, the talks. Because in Azerbaijan, it's not in a good or bad way. It's just different.
Yes.
We start communication in a different way. We start conversation in a different way. here I love that every conversation starts with weather.
It's very true.
Wherever I would go, we would start by discussing the weather
Yes.
each day. And at the beginning, I was like, I was not really feeling comfortable because it's not something that I'm used to do. But now when I go to Azerbaijan, I start to speak about the weather.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really interesting way. And obviously, when I moved as a student, I got adapt really fast.
Yeah.
I felt like home, and
Yeah.
people around me made me feel like home.
Yeah.
Even I've spent my Christmases here.
Yeah.
So I've been invited to by British families.
Great.
So my friends' families too. I've been hosted by them.
Uh-huh.
I've tried all the delicious food
Yeah.
that British people prepare.
Yes.
It was probably the most beautiful
Yeah.
time of the year, and let's say organization that I've been to, event that I have attended. It was the Christmas
Yeah.
with British family.
Christmas dinner is always very special. And I think it's, one of the things I know, of course, Azerbaijani people thinking about coming to study in the UK, they think about London, they think perhaps about Oxford and Cambridge. One of the amazing things about the UK is how many good universities we have all across the country, and some of the best faculties in particular subjects are not in Oxford or Cambridge, or not in London at all. So, in Warwick, there are some absolutely world-class, research in some areas. I have a son studying in Edinburgh. I've got a daughter studying in Durham. There are so many different good universities across the country.
I completely agree with you, and I think it's not just, as you've mentioned, Cambridge and Oxford.
Yeah.
Even, for example, one of the best universities for engineering and transport is in Coventry, in
Yes.
West Midlands.
Yes.
Because it's a capital of transport.
Yes.
And there's a transport museum there, and there's so many interesting and unique faculties. It's not just business faculty.
No,
because
for sure.
mostly for international students, it's usually business
Yeah.
faculties that they choosing. And I agree, because I understand why.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've done as
Yeah.
well. And it feels really safe because of the language barrier.
Yes.
It's more adaptable and an understandable faculty. But to be honest, if it would be me now, I would go to RADA for presenting an acting
Yes.
school, which is I'm still planning to do.
It's never too late to
No.
start learning a new subject. And when did you make the decision after studying that actually you wanted to work and move to the UK, at least for now?
So to be very honest, I got my first job on second week when I moved to UK.
Uh-huh.
I was working in a coffee shop in my university.
Good.
And my family was always they're really strict with me.
Yeah.
And they never spoiled me. And they said, if you want to live in UK, that's your decision.
Yeah.
We are happy to help you to study.
Yeah.
But you need to make your own way and your own path. And that's what's been driving me to find the job.
Yeah.
And I learned to combine my university with my part-time job.
Yeah.
And I worked in multiple places.
Yeah.
I worked in hospitality.
Yeah.
I've done interesting jobs, and I've met really interesting people. And I was never ashamed to go and to work in service, in hospitality,
Yeah.
in food and beverage. It was because it was once a life experience.
And it's such a British thing to do. I mean, when I did my undergraduate degree, I worked in a bar. When I did my master's degree, I worked in a bar. I'd worked in a theatre bar up in Edinburgh before.
Wow.
I was teaching English as a foreign language in language colleges in the holidays, but still working through the term. And I think, it teaches you experience as a person. Of course, it's useful to have the money, but also it gives you a different sense of how things work and who you are. I think it's really important life experience as well.
Exactly, and that's what shaped me personally, and what it was a great experience to understand the work culture in UK.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it's very different
Yeah.
than anywhere else, and the way people approach work here is also, I think, really interesting perspective. So, and as you mentioned, that's really British thing to do, because I've met so many people that don't really need to go to work in a bar or in a restaurant, but they do, because
Yeah.
that's everyone wants to make their own money.
Yes.
And that's what I love about youth in UK, that they're always open to just to becoming independent
Yeah.
and make an income at very early stage of their life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
We are continuing with your questions
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm interested in anything that took a little bit longer to get used to about living in the UK. Maybe something where you had to change your attitude a little or to adapt in order to feel that you were able to live successfully here.
To be honest, I'm still learning.
Yeah,
I'm
always.
still learning, and I think I will be learning all my life.
Yes.
But I would say maybe to adapt is the accent.
Yes.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
because I don't have British accent, and I think it will take some time, obviously, for me to really have a strong accent here.
Yeah.
And when I just moved, I had a Scottish friend, and from Glasgow, and we are still really, really good friends. And I was struggling to understand
Yes,
him.
it can be a
That
difficult
was one
accent.
of the strongest, I would say,
Yes.
difficulties that I experienced. But as soon as I've just adapted and I got used to, I don't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like for me it's the same English, but I can just understand that which part of UK the person is from.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
it's very true.
To be honest, also I would say emails, the email culture, the messaging culture, the email culture of UK, I think is very unique and different.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and as an Azerbaijani,
Yeah.
I see a huge difference, as I said again, not in a good or bad way, just in a different way.
Yeah.
When I receive an email from an Azerbaijani person or when I receive from a British person, I can tell immediately if someone is from UK or living in UK.
And what would you say defines UK email culture?
Warm regards.
Warm regards, yes.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me today, Mariam. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Auld. And I just want to say that my audience is, as I said, I'm just a free media and I'm an influencer. I'm using social platforms to promote something good, to promote my country to the world.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking for myself and for my people and educating people more about Azerbaijan just voluntarily. And it's something that I do as a hobby. It's not a job for me.
Yes.
And some people think that it's a job, but actually I have a corporate job that I'm working 9 to 6. And this is my part-time channel.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being part of my channel today, because it means a lot for me to have you as a British ambassador to Azerbaijan, as ambassador of United Kingdom to Azerbaijan. I think it will change misconceptions of people about UK, about Azerbaijan. So thank you so much for being part of my podcast and my talk show, Maria in Motion. And I thought maybe we could finish our show with Azerbaijani, some Azerbaijani sentence. So ben düşündüm ki ahırıncı cümleni Azerbaycanca seslendirerek ve Azerbaycan'a ve İngiltere'ye buradan sevgiler göndererek.
Bugün için çok sağ olun Mariam Hanım. Umid ederim ki sizin audience, I've forgotten the word for audience, izleyicine bu program eğlenceli olacak.
Bence de. Ben de onu ümit ederim ve bir daha bizi böyle I will move to English. It's hard for me to move. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Auld. And it was a pleasure to have you as a guest today.
Demez. Uğurlar ve çok sağ olun.
Çok sağ olun.